Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast, the official podcast of Pineland, broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location deep inside Pineland, where we discuss faith, family, finances, firearms, freedom, food, and everything else in between, with those who believe in living free and living out the values that made this country free. Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast. My name is Paul Lefevre. I'm here with my Ranger buddy Mike Blackburn. And today we brought into the G-Base one of America's best, a man named Hera, a barrel-chested freedom fighter. Today he's coming in on Friday, the 11th of November. And so we're almost to 1 year on our podcast. And so it's awesome to have him coming on in. He checked his 6 on the way in to make sure he wasn't followed.
It's an honor to be here. Just being able to talk to you guys who I respect so much. So thank you for inviting me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. It's the time has come. As they say, there's ideas whose time has come, and really this podcast I've been itching to get at. And I know you have a lot of experiences in Ukraine. So for those of you who don't know Hera, he's a man who is no stranger to Ukraine and the special military operation of President Putin, which we know that was launched on the 24th of February this year. So now we're in the 8th month of the Russian full invasion. Before that, the Russians invaded, took Crimea and the Donbass. We know those two breakaway oblasts there. But up until that time, it was really was not a full invasion. And so, but our friend Hera here, he was there. So there's so many places to go on a podcast like this. You have a lot of experiences that a lot of us want to know about. So I was thinking the best way to kick this off is really just to say, hey, man, it's good that you're with us.
Yeah.
And that you made it back alive. So how would you want to start this?
Oh, well, I think the best thing to say is just when I went there, I got there late March. I had heard the call from President Zelensky that he was forming the International Legion for Ukraine, and that he was looking for combat veterans, especially Western combat veterans, to quickly stand up the Ukrainian army, train them, and even assist with their fighting, which the Legion is out there doing right now. And we've found a niche for ourselves in Ukraine, and we're doing good work.
Yeah, so you answered the call. Now, I remember when that call went out, I'm here. And like everyone else, like a lot of other guys, I wanted to go. I mean, I had my, the dander up. I wanted to go and, defend freedom. I saw the invasion as evil, which it is. And it is genocide. We have seen these atrocities attacking, not combatants, but just wanton destruction and all the like. But I saw that, and I wanted to go too, but you're a guy who actually answered the call.
Yeah. And I've had that discussion a lot with some other veterans. I was in a good place professionally and privately to be able to go. And there's a lot of good experienced guys who just aren't in that place. I would say for Ukraine, if you've got to be here and fight for your family, you've got to be here and fight your battles, your everyday battles that you need to fight back here at home. That's what you ought to be doing. Nobody who saw that call and felt the itch and decided not to go. There's no blame there. A lot of the guys showing up to Legion, same kind of story. Professional soldiers from all over the place. I mean, guys from not just America and Sweden and the rest of it, but even guys from Brazil, from Colombia.
Wow. They're
showing up and offering their services for a fight against evil. But yeah, no, if you got stuff to settle back home, that's your main fight. You got to fight for your family. You got to fight for your country.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you brought that up because if you're a Ukrainian American, I mean, you're probably going to be drawn to go over there and help out, okay? Or if you have some sort of vested interest. The other group of guys that you mentioned, which I think you're spot on, are sort of the professional warrior class guys that just, this is what they do for a living. This is the way they're wired. And, they go from one conflict to the next. But for you, I'm not quite too sure which of those two categories, which one do you think you fall into, or is there a third that I'm unaware of?
Oh, I would say I'm a professional warrior. I mean, after 8 years in the military, and that's a conventional guy. So I was a scout in the U.S. Army, but I was a pretty motivated guy, and a big part of our training back home is to fight the conventional war against Russia. Right, that's the United States primary doctrine. So I thought I had a lot to offer as far as fighting a conventional war against Russia goes. And then, I mean, even after I got out, I was seeking opportunities in the private sector. I was on private security for hurricane relief in the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and pulled some contracts in Colombia, places like that, as well as, I still help train future warriors and support training operations here in the United States. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the stuff that you put together for these guys, and it's good stuff. It really is, and I'm not quite too sure the strength of the Ukrainian army at the time of the invasion. My guess is it was lacking.
Yeah, they in north of Kyiv, where I was at, you had quote unquote territorial defense, which is just people who were able to secure arms from the Ukrainian government that was just giving them out, and then walking around the woods, with like torches, fires lit. You could see them for miles, and they're just trying to do their best.
Yeah, I think we were fortunate enough to have Christian Hickey on some months ago. I can't remember how long it's been now, but of course he's not over there training. He's over there doing some other things, but one of the things that he brought up to us was, is just, you can't help yourself, but you just want to help these guys because you get down in the trench with them and you go, you're just looking around and you're like, guys, I mean, we need to get basic soldiering skills and just things that are going to help you survive. And he wasn't teaching anything high speed. I mean, he's basically just trying to teach them the basics, because these guys are just volunteers, are just kind of flooding in. They've got a need to defend their home, their families, their country, but they know nothing.
Yeah, I gave a class at the battalion level for urban operations, and I mean, what do I know? I'm not an officer, right? I've not been to a single war college. I haven't even been to IBC, right? So like, the class was basically like machine gun employment combined with like some elements of breaching, like SOSRA, and applying it to, street to street house fighting. So, not Battle Drill 6, but moving up into the bigger picture for the battalion deployment. And those guys loved that class. They had no idea that training was, they didn't know how to even begin to think about how they're going to deploy, their 600-man element. And then this just gave them something that they could go off of.
Right. I guess the point I'm making is, I mean, you're a very humble guy. But I'm pretty familiar with what you do know, and the knowledge that you do have, that you've accumulated over the years of your service and experience, is sorely needed over there. I mean, you walk over there and you're like you're like von Steuben over there. I mean, as far as the things that you take for granted, the knowledge that you take for granted, that you just absorbed for your time in service, is just huge to these guys. You're enlightening them on subjects they haven't even thought about.
Yeah, we the veteran community, man, we make fun of ourselves a lot, especially the combat arms and below kind of conventional side of things. We look up at the special operators and we're like, damn, we suck. But the truth is, we are the greatest army in the world, the United States military. We're super organized. I mean, the operations we can pull off are unbelievable to any other military, especially on the logistics and, the fact we had our whole military forward deployed for 20 years, right? And we're just used to operating like that. That's just normal to us.
That's right. Hey, so I wanted to read this email you sent me, most of it anyway. So I received it on the 4th of March, and it says, Paul, I'm taking a trip to Europe. Depending on how the scheduling goes, I might not be back for a while.
Yeah.
So that's where you were then. I mean, so that was what happened after that? How did you get over there? And then, I mean, can you describe to us, that initial channeling of those forces and how they brought that in? What was that like?
So yeah, when I decided to go, there's conflicts all over the world happening all the time. I don't attend all of them privately. On this case, the Ukrainian government asked for combat veterans from the West. They specifically demanded, put out that call. So if they didn't ask us to be there, I wouldn't have gone. So they asked for us to go, and they provided information for us to go contact the embassy in Washington, D.C., and went to the Ukrainian embassy and said, hey, guys, this is what I got, and this is what I can bring in. And they said, great, can you leave right now? And I was like, I told them, like, no, give me 2 weeks just to learn something about your country and get my bags packed. But yeah. They needed personnel right away. So as soon as I made contact with the Ukrainian embassy, they wanted us there right now. They were in the middle of the Battle of Kyiv, and if they had lost that, this would be a different picture. We're celebrating Ukrainian assaults right now, but that wouldn't have been possible if we lost Kyiv.
Most definitely. And on the news, we're seeing the evacuations of the women and children, the men sticking around, taking up arms. And so that's when you arrived in Kyiv, you saw that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you saw the tension in the air, also rockets. You've had airstrikes, artillery strikes, mortars.
Yeah, the artillery is nuts. So I mean, I did Iraq and Afghanistan. Hit some IEDs. Received some fire, but it's nothing like what it is over there. I mean, we took grad rocket fire for 5 minutes straight. I mean, 5 minutes, everything was exploding.
Wow.
I mean, that's all. I mean, it felt like forever. That was the first time we experienced that artillery fire. It was insane. So the amount of lead that's being flung over there is unbelievable. The way the Russians are fighting, it's basically a major battle for logistics. They just, as many rounds as you can carry. It's like the fighting there is strange. It's like two sides just pull up with buses, kick out guys and ammo, and whoever runs out of ammo first, loses. So wow. Plus the artillery, plus the drones, and the Russians. We think the drone warfare is new, but both the Russians and the Ukrainians have developed that drone warfare through the conflict of the Donbass starting in 2014. And so that even was pretty well refined already. And I've been constantly, I was upset at the time. I'm still upset that there's no human fire observers correcting fire or making sure that people don't hit either friendlies or civilians. It's just all drones. Just all drone observers pisses me off.
Hey, so something, that's, we certainly hear that a lot. And it certainly adds to the chaos and the lethality. Can you describe when you first got there and like your first job? I think you talked about that earlier. Just, you were an instructor.
Well, first job was actually with a combat element in the Legion. We did the one kind of clearing operation in north of Kyiv. But basically the battle was over by then, and that's where I got hit. And I pivoted. I went to the hospital for 3 months.
Hey, tell us about that. So you're in a battle. You get hit. What do you remember about that?
I just remember, my big takeaways were, and I already knew this, but even when you're with a group of strangers, you guys bond pretty quickly. My guys were on top of my treatment and solving the lethal problem, right away.
And you got shot, just so everyone knows, you got shot in the right wrist.
Right wrist and the torso.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it hit twice with one bullet.
So you're basically you're toting a gun,
Yeah.
and in your in that position, the bullet smokes through your wrist and then goes into your body.
Yeah, just right through the side, right on the edge of the armor.
AK.
There. Yeah, it's 5.45.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So then, obviously, as a fellow wounded warrior, when you get hit, you're not going to just keep trucking on.
Well, I thought that what I teach this in classes. I teach, it takes more than one bullet to take somebody down. Like you got to shoot them to the ground, right? I teach that, but I've never had to, I've never had to do it that close with somebody else in like, let's say inside of a building. And so I was actually up for about a minute and a half helping direct my own care.
Okay.
And that's when the pain, after about 90 seconds, I estimate, that's when the pain got me down. And then I lost consciousness after 5 minutes.
Definitely stronger than me, I think.
Oh, no.
I was looking up at the ceiling, but you got, when you got hit, you knew it.
Oh, yeah.
It stung.
Oh, yeah.
And then your concern was, I think what you've talked about before is the medical aspect wasn't quite what we're used to here.
No, so I mean, we had people from all over the world with different priorities of training, especially medical as well. And I had my platoon medic did a pretty good job. Actually, an American, what we call an American medic over there, but essentially she was like an ER nurse here in the States. And she took care. She's the one who took charge of the care and actually made the correct interventions. Initially, we were just doing stuff like packing the body with gauze. And I remember I was a little upset with my medic. I was a little upset with him because he hadn't done what I felt was a thorough blood sweep on the back, and I was sure that I had an exit wound. I ended up like yelling at him, and he was like, "Hey man, you caught that bitch, baby. You got it. You're good. It's no exit wound." I was like, "Thanks, man." But it was a hodgepodge, and I was lucky that we had two really well trained medics who kind of showed up near that 5 minute mark and took care of me, got the right interventions in.
Yeah. So from that initial contact, we're talking. This was it's kind of a saga from there, right? I mean, it wasn't like you're getting the ambulance and off to the hospital you go.
No, I had
So
six guys moved me off the X. Eventually got into a vehicle that I could barely remember, and a lot of it I was unconscious. So I mean, a lot of it I've had to be told, like, "Hey, you were at the military hospital for 2 days," and they were just packing blood into you. They're just giving you blood and blood and blood and blood. And eventually you hit the specialist hospital to actually do the surgery and actually stop the bleeding. So I was bleeding for like 2 days.
Wow. Sometimes we move past this so quick, but as you're going unconscious, you're shot. You're there as an American fighting for our allies. What's going through your mind as you're actively losing consciousness?
So I trusted my guys. And they were basically, I felt pretty at peace because I knew they were working on me. I wasn't sure if I was going to die or not, but I knew I did believe my chances were pretty good, considering that my men were all there. They were taking care of me, and it was kind of in someone else's hands at that point.
Yeah, it sounded like you had a lot of camaraderie.
We did.
Already developed with these guys.
Yeah, in a very short period of time we did, yeah.
So that, the one thing that you had mentioned before that I love about the Ukrainian people is just the spirit of the people.
Mm-hmm.
The resilience, the doggedness of the people, knowing that their cause is righteous. And then so that you guys just rode this wave, and it still is happening there as you are pushing back these forces. You're reoccupying areas, repatriating areas. So you had a sense of that.
Yeah, the Ukrainians were really good to us, and I've worked with Iraqis and Afghans and Jordanians and Saudis and Colombians and all these other Koreans. I can't, there's like a lot, right? I am, these are the best people I've ever worked with from another country.
Yeah, I was going to say, because, I mean, Ukraine is a poor country. I mean, it's Eastern European country. Mm-hmm. And I think the one thing about a place like that is the people are more resilient because you have to be. Okay, they got harsh winters. There's not a lot of money. It's not Western Europe. They scratch out a living. We all know there's a lot of corruption in Ukraine. Okay, so whatever the governmental system that these people struggle in, I mean, that's what they got. And I'm assuming people like that are very thankful when someone comes and provides something for them, or when someone is willing to put their own life online. This is their homeland. I mean, you expect them to be fighting with everything they have, and just like we would be doing in this country if the Mexicans or the Canadians came across the border. Okay, but I think I think you're right. I think these people are very tough, and they appreciate the help.
Oh, these people, for their entire, as far as I can tell, their recent existence, I've done my little bit of country study. They work for nothing. I mean, they resemble an African nation. They're like number one in food and food exports around the world, number 5 in grain exports in the world, and they're one of the poorest countries in the world. They work for nothing. And it's funny, they had a perception of foreigners, especially Westerners, especially Americans, and that's basically we're kind of thieves. That's what they think, and they're probably not wrong. As far as their interactions with American businesses, I'm not sure how that actually works out, but. One of the things I would say to disarm, any Ukrainian that was like, hey man, I sold my motorcycle to get my plane ticket to come over here, and that would just be like, oh, okay. So you're not here to rob us. I'm like, no. I'm here to give back to you guys. And, they have a phrase. So talking about, kind of who they are. And this phrase has kind of encapsulates, Ukrainians for me. Their currency is hryvnia, and their phrase is, I don't have 100 hryvnia, but I have 100 friends. And that's how Ukrainians are, right? Their capital is in their relationships with other people, their relationships with themselves. In Kyiv, Kyiv is a huge city. And I would, after I got out of the hospital, I'd walk around, we kicked the Russians out, so people are actually out on the streets. And constantly I would see people running into each other, saying hi, giving hugs. That's not something I would ever see in like New York City or some of the other places I've lived, right? It's these people, I mean, they really care about each other, and it's really great to see. They're really good people.
Well, the other thing too is the Ukrainians were fortunate enough to have America's best and brightest guys like you that were selling their motorcycles or whatever else to get over there and help. There probably wasn't a lot of snake oil salesmen heading over there because there just wasn't any money over there. And,
right now, yeah.
What we had over there, and probably what we have over there now, and I certainly have seen a bunch of these guys. Guys that are removing mines from farmland, guys that are over there teaching them medical first aid and how to take care of their buddies when they get wounded or injured, just like what happened to you. Guys like you that they're teaching basic soldier stuff so they can stay alive, they can defend their country, blah blah. So. They're getting the best and brightest. They're getting America's warrior class is what these guys are witnessing over there.
Yeah.
Yes. So after you were shot, you said basically you were bleeding for about maybe 2 weeks. I mean, that's incredible. Number one, that you actually made it. That's incredible right there. But
yeah. 2 days of bleeding. Then I remember seeing the surgery lights going under. I guess I was in surgery for 2 days, 8 hours apiece. And they did their best. I still had some leaks that they had to drain, and over the next. And I had a massive infection, and that was awesome. 103 plus degree fever for days. That was.
Is this on your gut?
The what?
Was the damage in your gut?
It blew my liver up.
Okay, so that's in a really nasty little place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why they were having a hard time finding the bleeding. Because I mean, that had injured a lot of things going through there.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of stuff to hit.
Mm-hmm. Luckily, it was just the one organ, so nothing else. The kidneys are good, and VA's got my back here, and it's all looking good. I got checked up while I was home, so
yeah. From what the story I remember you told me before is something like you got into this medical system, so you got moved to Poland, was it?
No. That's what I was actually initially. I was trying to get a ride out of there because I didn't understand what the medical system was, and their interventions over there. I mean, it's Soviet medicine, so it was a little different than what I'm used to. But once I got used to their system, it was really good. The doctors and surgeons did a really great job.
I'm thinking of Christian. That's what happened to him. I'm getting my two warrior stories mixed.
Yeah, no, I stayed in Ukraine, and I was really happy with the care I received. It was a great time, actually. I'm really fond of the hospital I was in.
You said something. You had talked about when you were recovering. You're on the gurney. You're in the hospital, and just how appreciative the people were, and how they let you know that. Yeah,
I mean, I was taking pictures with, people wanted selfies with me and stuff. I got to visit the Ukrainian wounded warriors, and even one of the wounded Ukrainian fighters who was in the hospital. He came up to me in the first week and said, "Hey, can I move in with you?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, man." And we're still buddies. So when I go back to Ukraine, I'm actually bringing him a ton of gear, and I'm actually bringing a lot of gear back. I'm bringing a couple spy scopes for 2 sniper teams out there. I'm bringing an entire platoon's worth of cold weather gear.
I was going to ask that because one of the issues that there are hot topics in the news, obviously, is it's cold over there in the winter, right? And it appears as though the Russians are purposely attacking the Ukrainian power grid. I don't know if you think that's what's going on, but it certainly looks that way.
So I've been back home for a month. I'm getting ready to leave soon here. And I actually haven't seen the effects firsthand of what's going on with the blackouts in Kyiv, although I'm hearing a lot about it. And I'm definitely, my friends in Ukraine are telling me about it. It's already horrendous right now. It sounds like it's not even actually cold over there yet. I mean, starting to get that way.
Yeah, and you were there in March, so I mean I imagine that was pretty cold already.
Yeah, it was a little cold in March. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I mean the people there they're not strangers to cold weather.
No. Yeah.
So I think we may be hyping up the cold weather a bit much because they've gone through worse.
Well, the hype. So the cities, when you have a massive amount of people, children, old people, they're going to suffer the most. Probably the military will generally be okay. One thing I kept hearing is like, oh, don't attack Russia in winter. It's like, well, what do you mean by Russia? Because I mean these are Ukrainians. Yeah. They fight in cold too, man. So the winter is not going to be kind to Russian soldiers in Ukraine. Right. Ukrainian soldiers know how to fight in the cold, and they're going to fight well.
Well, I mean, am I wrong that a lot of times fighting is optimal in that part of the country just because everything's frozen and you can actually cross some of that ground that sometimes you can't because of the the rains and what have you?
Yeah, you can get away with a lot. I'm going to see firsthand. I actually, I've done some cold weather stuff in Korea and Colorado, but I'm going to get to learn about what they actually do over there. I have some, I've heard some things, but I haven't actually seen it, and I'm gonna get to see it. So,
hey, can we go back to what you're talking about? Your initial impression of the Russian soldier.
Oh, sure.
Just what was that like? We hear lots of things on the news, but what's that like?
Well, in North Kyiv, they were just kind of running away. A lot of evidence of things like a lot of drinking and human rights violations, basically, more or less.
Not their best and brightest.
No, not their best and brightest. And talking about their best and brightest, so my guys, they went to Mykolaiv after Kyiv, and one of my teams actually got chased by a Russian jet, which is my guy, they think it was a MiG, but my guy doesn't know exactly like his vehicle ID just yet. At the time, he didn't. But when I say they got chased, I mean the guy saw him.
Yeah.
The guy did 3 passes on him, and dropped 3 bombs and missed all 3 wide. Wow. And that's pretty sad coming from a Russian fighter pilot entrusted with $1 million piece of equipment.
Yeah, and I've seen, and you've probably, no doubt you've seen this too, is GPS, like taped to the cockpit dashboard.
Yeah.
That's just interesting. So it just seems like this was just. I mean, the Russian logistics already look janky. I think that's the best word, but just like a rickety hodgepodge of guys thrown in. Maybe that's why. I mean, we're just trying to figure out.
Yeah, we've talked about this because
it's amazing
having joined the military during the Cold War and the big Soviet Union threat, and
really not impressed.
The superior. Well, clearly things have changed. Okay, clearly it's not the Soviet Union anymore. Clearly it's Russia now, and there's a reason for that. Okay, so we knew they had some economic hardships. Otherwise, they'd still be around, right? And there's been a lot of changes within Russia as a result of kind of going from that old Soviet system to this kind of new Russia that I still think they're kind of developing. Obviously, the armed forces looks like it's suffered as a result of a lot of that change. And
kind of like we were in the 70s.
Exactly. And I'm wondering,
Vietnam.
And so a lot of us, I think, are sitting back wondering, okay, how much of this is strategy, where maybe we're just kind of roll our B team in here, okay, because we could probably get by with that and save our A team for the reserve, or if we need it, or was that the best they got?
No, I've heard that narrative, but I don't buy that's the B team. I think that was the A team.
That was the A team. So I mean, and they tried some fancy stuff, in Hostomel and down in the port of Odessa, and it didn't work out for them. They basically, if you study Russian, if you look at Russian manuals, like if you looked at American, if you try to think about how you're going to fight the Americans, you probably should look at Battle Drill 1 Alpha, and with a support, main firing line and then a flanking movement. And then you could basically try and understand how you would fight the Americans, let's say. So if you're going to do the same thing with Russia, you would study their Russian defense, and their offense is essentially the same thing as their defense. And there's been no evolution on that. If you study it, it's exactly the same, which is a sacrificial unit surrounded by a semicircle of heavy arms, Russian heavy arms. And that's exactly what they do. And, it's the concept of having a sacrificial unit is built into Russian military doctrine.
Wow.
And, my guys were in Severodonetsk. They were just putting down sacrificial units over and over.
Well, here's the thing, too, though. So what if this is 21st century? Okay, people have smartphones. People are on TikTok. It doesn't really matter where you're from. I guess the point I'm saying is that old strategy may have worked with a different generation, like a really tough generation that was a little more into let's just duty, honor, country, and let's just get online and do what we have to do for Mother Russia. I'm not quite sure if the 21st century male is into the sacrificial unit stuff. That might be some of the problem they're having?
Well, I hope so, because, the reality is, I think you can play like 500 plus levels of Candy Crush. It's 2022, right? It's 2022, right? Yeah. If Russia, let's say if Russia wanted to invest in sewage, power, internet access in their own country, they just would never have done this. And that's Russia's problem is, they do live in a modern world, but they, the whole reason for like this invasion is comes down to the fact that they've done no domestic investment in themselves. I know that's big picture, but like that's what's, when you see the guys, carrying off the washing machines in Bucha and killing people, civilians over New Balance shoes. And that, that's real shit. Yeah. Exactly what you're saying is like, it's a whole new world, man. And you're not, we figured out how to adapt to that in the American military. But they really haven't, and really they all they've done for practice is like a small intervention in Syria or a single deployment of a small Wagner team to like Africa or something like that. They have no clue how to run their big army logistics anymore, and they can't even, as we've seen, they can't even make a move on their own border against a country that was like totally unprepared for them.
Hey, so that's a great point that some of our listeners may not know is the original special military operation was, they took Crimea and they took the Donbass, those two oblasts, and it seems like, when that happened in 2014, Ukraine was definitely not ready.
Mm-hmm.
They were not ready, and it seems like that the February 24th invasion was like a part two, like a part deux, and I think they thought that Ukraine would still do nothing. It seems like the Russians thought they were just going to execute another Crimea and another Donbass, and that Ukraine would just capitulate. And what happened was it really fomented the patriotic fervor of Ukraine, and they weren't ready for that. It seemed like the Russian special military operation didn't count on that. Is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows about how like forward deployed the Hostomel attack was for the VDV, right? They also had PSYOPs units basically in the middle of Kyiv in a district called Oblon. On the first day of the operation, they had T-72s inside warehouses. They rolled up the doors and just drove them into the middle of totally unconquered Ukraine. So just in the middle of the civilian population, they had tanks so that they could take the picture and say, hey, the tanks are already in Kyiv, right? And it didn't count on the fact, they really, what you're saying is they thought that everyone was going to be like, okay, hooray, Russia's here. But those tanks were on fire in less than 24 hours,
Yeah.
I don't know what they thought. I don't know what they thought they were doing.
And the picture you're painting of the Russian soldier, it seems like, look, there was no declaration of war.
Yeah.
And the common Russian soldier who were sitting on the border for months prior to that, they really didn't know they were going to be invading. And it seems like at the last minute, they're like, okay, we're going over. And so there was never really a lot of prep.
Yeah, that's
let me ask you this, because there's a lot of people that say really Russia's only interested in the eastern portions of Ukraine, the Russian-speaking portions of Ukraine. Sort of a reuniting of a Russian cultural immersed part of Ukraine, and I'm not sure how much affinity those folks have with the rest of Ukraine. So I understand that there may be some difficulty in that part of Ukraine.
Yeah, the Russian-speaking zone.
Yeah. And so, I'm not quite too sure how Ukrainians look at that, because I think maybe Russia's plan, at least I've heard, and I think it's plausible, that really Russia wanted to come in, hit Kiev, not because they were interested in keeping Kiev, but get to Kiev to where, they'll sue for peace. They'll kind of just give us this eastern portion, and everything kind of just goes back to, normal. But Russia's a little bit bigger and Ukraine's a little smaller. What are your thoughts on that, or what do the people in Ukraine say about that?
Yeah, so okay, I talked to a lot of Ukrainians just to try and understand, because as a Westerner, a big question in my mind is just like, why it's Russian? Why is Russian doing this? Why is Russian doing this? And the Ukrainians, luckily at that hospital, these are some of the most educated people in the country treating me. They educated me on the Holodomor genocide of the 1930s. So just prior to World War II, Russia, the Soviet Union, and Stalin, yeah.
Yeah, his starving.
Yeah, he made a man-made genocide. He killed like over half the population. Got the entire country sort of collectivized under the USSR, and several times in their history, the Ukrainian language has been banned from being spoken in Ukraine. That includes, a couple of times in the 20th century. So, Russia has always tried to, they've always tried to keep Ukrainians under their thumb, saying that they're rats, they're meaningless people. And they really view not just Ukraine, they view everything. They view Kazakhstan, they view, all the stands as just vassal states of Russia.
They view, if I understand this right, the Russians view Ukraine as a make-believe, like a made-up country.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Like a Western puppet.
Yeah,
it's just made up.
Yeah, and that's not a stretch if you understand the Russian mind, because really Russians treat themselves that way, right? It's it's still a kind of a serfdom culture that they come from. Is they really don't believe in freedom, even for themselves, and so certainly not for an outsider. So they've used Ukraine as a slave state for a lot of its history, and the fact that they had to face an independent Ukraine, and Ukraine basically has been in Russia's face for a while now. They overthrew Yanukovych in 2008, who was basically a
Russian puppet.
Putin's buddy. Yeah. They overthrew him again in 2014. Both times he had millions of protesters. The Ukrainians have really spoken out and said, like, look, we are a freaking free nation that exists, and that's freaking that. And
that seems like just part of this too, within these talking points, is it seemed like Russia, kind of a death thing, they wanted to keep Ukraine out of NATO.
Yeah.
Of course, they had this in the fake news is, Russia would call Zelensky, Hitler and Nazis and all that stuff. But that's really what it was, right?
Yeah. So the 2014 Maidan Revolution, and if you don't know anything about, Winter on Fire is on Netflix. You can go watch and find out about it.
Fantastic documentary. Yeah, Winter on Fire.
But there was basically Ukrainians had a choice at that time whether they wanted to be a Russian vassal state or they wanted to be a free and independent people, and they made a resounding choice to be free and independent. Russia has used recently, since their independence in 1991, Russia has cut off natural gas supplies to Ukraine several times to try to control that country. And, in 2013, somebody went and finally explored the Black Sea around Crimea and found massive natural gas reserves. And that's where really this conflict goes pretty much to that, which is that Russia figured out that they would not be able to control Ukraine through its energy. And they needed to launch it. So when we talk about Donbass, it's like, yeah, they're closer to the border of Russia. But ultimately what Russia wants is control of the energy market in Ukraine because they don't want an independent Ukraine. I've definitely met people from Lysychansk who are very fucking upset with the Russian invasion. I've met a lot of people from Kharkiv who are upset with the Russian invasion. I haven't met a single Ukrainian who wanted this and was okay with this. So Russia, they're on their border. Russia's had a soft power takedown of Ukraine going for decades, for like 40 years. They've been trying to do a soft power takedown in Ukraine. There's been a lot of propaganda that's come out as a result of that. So sometime, when you hit people for long enough with the kind of propaganda that Russia puts out, sometimes it works a little bit, and there probably is some Russian sympathizers in the Donbass, but it's not the majority. I highly doubt it's the majority.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely part of the narrative that's spun in the Kremlin is this is rescuing Russians outside of Russia.
Yeah,
and so that's part of this milieu, this big pot of reasons why keeping on a NATO. Obviously, the natural gas. And but hey, so something I wanted to make sure we get into this also is we talked about the taking back of the repatriation of these areas outside of Kyiv and what that was like, and just if you can, we've heard some of the genocide, but can you describe what that was like? Especially around the area of Kyiv and seeing the Russians tuck tail and getting out of there.
Yeah. So, we just, I got to see, again, that north area of Kyiv, just where they had the Russians that come through. There's shelling everywhere. I mean, there's holes in everything. And
so there's not like a military target thing.
No, there's no way, because the Ukrainian army was not that big,
Yeah.
So cluster bombs, summer homes, just get kind of in the middle of
churches,
of nice,
schools.
Just these nice places, and there's holes in every window, and there's just kind of destruction everywhere. There were definitely bodies in the street for a long time, but I got to see kind of a day or two of that before I had to go to the hospital. So, but there's just holes. There's holes in everything.
Yeah, I imagine that the captured Russians, when the Ukrainians do get one, they have to really restrain themselves.
Yeah,
I would imagine that.
that's something I'm still working on over there. So it sounds to me that everyone's kind of starting to understand that when you capture people and you don't kill them, that you can end up capturing more people. That's actually a cornerstone of like the U.S. military's doctrine. Is like what would the Germans say in World War II? They said, what would you tell your son? Is like surrender the first American you see. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so they're still figuring that out. Now, I will say that there is a lot of evil that still needs to be sorted out from the Donbass war in 2014.
Yeah.
And anytime you get two populations that are ethnically related, that's the most vicious fighting that there is. So,
Hey, so where do you see, you look in the crystal ball right now, and as a armchair general, what do you see happening?
yeah, so I've thought about this quite a lot, which is, one of the big questions now is like, what is winning for Ukraine, or how do the Ukrainians define that? And they actually have options, right? Maybe they want to bring it back to the 2022 February border. Maybe they want to bring it back to the 2014 border, right? Definitely, they're going to definitely take back Mariupol. I'll say that they definitely are not stopping until then. Maybe they want to take back Crimea, right? So they have options for defining victory. And as an American, I know how important it is to define your terms for victory, right? It's something we kind of failed in the Middle East. And one thing, the flip side of that is like, how do the Russians define victory? And they've got no hope. How do you define a Russian victory right now? Like, what are they going to say? What's their stopping point? They're lost. They're completely lost right now. They have there's no way, there's no stop point for them that they could possibly define, because they're just getting crushed.
Yeah, that is, at this point, I can't read Putin's mind. That's a scary thing, but just how do you extricate yourself from this quagmire? For the Russians, it's a quagmire. I mean, it looks like they're going to withdraw from Kherson.
Yeah.
Right. We're almost back to the actual line of contact on the Donbass with the two breakaway Loblasts, and then the northern, the extreme right, line is crumbling.
Yeah.
Slowly. So it just all the indications look like a withdrawal back to at least Crimea and to Donbass. So
isn't that what everyone's worried about? I mean, is he the kind of guy that is going to do whatever it takes to save face?
Exactly.
Is he a guy that can wiggle his way out of this with some sort of
some dignity
for his country?
And what
how
weapons does he use?
And the more important question is, what does the West do? Does the West recognize this, or are we going to keep pushing this guy and try to figure out, are we going to get him to push the big red button, or what? What's the deal on our side?
So something's going right over there. I had a nice gas mask and 2 filters ready to go, because I assumed by May that if we were actually holding the line, that Russia would start dropping ammonia and chlorine on us, at least that, right? Yeah. Maybe worse. Nobody's had to break that stuff out. There's like a small thing in Mariupol where I think they possibly employed one munition, but the investigation's still going on with that. But in Syria, they run gas like it's nothing. They don't care. And so something's going right on the diplomatic back channel type stuff, where they have not employed the chemical, at least. And so I'm not worried about anything unless that happens. And God, I hope that doesn't happen. So the reality is that let's say if NATO wanted to put a no-fly zone over Ukraine, the Russians just have no hope on a conventional war. They've screwed. I mean, they can't mess with it. I mean, most of the Ukrainian army is very inexperienced. A lot of I got to train these guys who are farmer to soldier in a couple of weeks, and that's who's repelling the big red army right now. And
so you've got probably 18, 19, 20-year-olds all the way up to 60-year-old Ukrainians.
Yeah, have to stay in country. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the guys that are actually manning the trenches. These are the guys that are running and gunning.
Ukrainian militia.
Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you this. This kind of, I don't know. I've been thinking about this week, coming up to this podcast. But are we involved in World War III? Is this the beginning of World War III?
So if the Ukrainians just solve this on their own, no, it's not. I mean, it has the potential. Definitely, there's already, as far as I can tell, there's already been like some major global interactions with the sanctions and energy. Russia's been trying to fight an energy fight against essentially Europe right now. And if we can solve this thing without involving official NATO forces, which is again one of the reasons me and the rest of the guys who went over there because we're not official NATO forces, then I think we're going to be okay, and I hope we're going to be okay. I mean, we live in a great peaceful world overall. Compared to, I mean, if you look at the casualty numbers from World War II and World War I mean, nothing stacks up. I mean, even how long was Vietnam? We lost 70,000 guys in Vietnam, and that was a long conflict. We're already at that number, unfortunately, for Russian deaths in this war.
And that's inordinate comparative to the Ukrainian deaths, if I understand things. Now, we have civilian deaths, but just like Ukrainian combat deaths, I think are much lower than 70.
Yeah, that's the report, and so it's hard to know what the whole world is doing at the same time. But I will say for the 600, so I helped train a battalion of 600 dudes, and in basically a month and a half of urban combat in Severodonetsk, those guys, all 600, they lost 13 dudes, and 10 of them were from one artillery strike. So, I mean, and those guys were militia. I mean, they had leaders who had fought in Donbass, right? But those guys were effectively militia that they just kind of needed the infantry to be there. So they did really good. I mean, that's one unit, right? And I know that there are bigger casualties, especially with the artillery, but the Ukrainians are adapting to all this very rapidly. And they're so motivated that the ground, your lowest level guy is coming up with stuff that works. He's not just, nobody's just following orders over there in Ukraine. Everyone is innovating on the front line.
Morality is definitely on the side of the Ukrainian. They're the defender. I could just see I'm just trying to picture the 20-something-year-old Russian guy. He's trying to figure out, why in the hell he's even there. Okay. He loses a few buddies. He's probably starting to feel sorry for himself a little bit. He's kind of want to go home.
Yeah. This is,
this Ukrainian he's just getting more and more motivated. Every little victory, every foot forward, they're being empowered. You got guys like you coming over helping out. They got a freaking bunch of weapons and material flowing in behind them. They're getting more and more trained. I mean, this is not looking good at all for Russia. I'm just trying to figure out what their exit plan is.
I mean, I haven't heard anyone make this comparison, but Yom Kippur, right, for Israel. I mean, they retook. I mean, they grew the size of their country by 30% or something. Either that war or the 1967 war. I can't remember which one, but a bunch of guys teamed up to try to bully down Israel, and they actually grew their country because of their motivation. And Russia should be worried about that. I don't think they've considered what they're going to lose here. Yeah. And definitely, I feel terrible for the Russian soldiers. I really do. I don't like just putting down hungry dogs like that. You know what I mean? But that's kind of what we're dealing with over there.
Yeah, this is. I was thinking about this this week also. This, as Napoleon once said, the moral is to the physical 3-1. Mm-hmm. I think this conflict so far is an abject lesson in that reality. The morale and the moral is definitely in favor on the Ukrainian side, and I think that Russian soldier knows that, and in droves, they do not want to join those ranks. It's just not a righteous cause. Right. Fortunately, I've been a part of what I would call a righteous cause, to include the invasion of Iraq, to what I knew to be a righteous cause. I still think that was at least the Kurds to be free, right, and the removal of a dictator who kills his own people, murders his own people. But But yeah, I wanted to ask you this too. This was really my last question. You're getting ready to go back over there. How long do you see yourself there?
Oh, definitely through the winter. This time I'm on I'm still injured, so I'm still recovering. My core needs a little bit of work before I can actually strap on a ruck. And even if I can strap on a ruck, one thing I got to learn forcibly over there is it's better for me to train, 600 dudes than it is for me to strap a rifle.
You're absolutely a force multiplier by doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good. I think you're thinking right.
Yeah. So I'm going back on a training mission, and I do want to point out, because a lot of people, I see this online, especially I love America, I love my country, and you mentioned Iraq and all this. One thing I'll say about people who want to make comparisons, Putin even makes these comparisons, but we didn't go to Iraq to annex any territory.
Yeah,
right? We didn't go to Iraq to put down civilians and to bomb indiscriminately, and to, having artillery batteries working a month straight to level buildings. No. I mean, I've watched Apaches have targets for 4 hours, waiting for a 1-star general to sign off on that attack, because there's no comparison between the two. I'm sorry, online keyboard warriors. That we went to go solve a problem. Afghanistan, I think everyone understands. Iraq was a little rough, but at the end of the day, we weren't there to take Iraq and make it an American state, and that's essentially what's going on in Russia.
Yeah, we certainly do have a righteous cause, and for those soldiers that fight that definitely puts steel in their spine. So, my friend, I will be definitely praying for you while you go over there, and I know our church will too. I know you not to be a big praying man. I do in certain moments. When I was on the ground, believe me, I was reaching out. Yeah, like you say, there's no atheists in foxholes.
Oh yeah,
but I know that I know you'll do well, and it's awesome. Just the thought of you taking our tactics and then helping those people over there, those good people of Ukraine, defend their freedom, defend their lives, and so that's always a great cause. It's a righteous cause that you're going to go off and do. So my hat's off to you.
Thank you, Paul.
And I look forward to hearing from you again, maybe even while you're there.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it'd be awesome to get sort of a report. You said something earlier that made me chuckle a little bit. You said that, I haven't always been the best follower of God, but it does seem like He has a purpose for me.
He does.
And I think you're probably right.
Yeah, He does.
But it's been great having you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
Taking the time out, and Godspeed and be safe.
Godspeed to you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Paul.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Pinelander Podcast. And if you enjoy our content, we certainly hope you'll check out our sponsors. Blacksmith Publishing. Been serving the warrior class, people like Jack here, since 2013. We have great titles written by warriors for warriors. So if you're looking for a great reference book or just want to unwind and enjoy a good novel, make sure you check us out, blacksmithpublishing.com. Also, if you're looking for some cool Pinelander apparel, even if you're over in Ukraine, maybe a Pinelander podcast patch on your kit probably look pretty cool. Go over to Pinelander1776.com. Got a great selection of shirts, hats, jackets, sweaters, stickers, and everything else. If you're interested in helping develop our country's next generation of warriors, consider donating to the American Agoge Project. This is something that we're really passionate about, and we are going to be officially launching this project in celebration of our 10th anniversary coming up next year in 2023. So we're putting all the prep right now, but the American Agoge Project, really excited about it. Until our next meeting, keep your head on a swivel, stay mentally and tactically smart, physically and spiritually strong, and socially astute. And to each other we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. May God continue to bless Pineland.